week at Worldviews at War. This week we're talking about Christian media with Marcus Pittman.
Thank you for having me.
It's our pleasure to have King Ginger here.
That's right.
Kind of a celebrity in this house. So, we're talking about the new project.
He's already like
nervous.
Loor.
Loor. Okay. So we're talking about the new project Loor and Christian media. So before we dive in, I just want to play this trailer for your new project, and then talk about your new project. Talk about Christian media in general.
Why it sucks.
Yeah. Why?
Okay.
Yeah. Why Pure Flix is not as good as it could be.
Yeah. Sure.
Although I love Kirk Cameron.
He's great.
But I mean, he needs to be a little edgier.
There you go.
Right. So talk a little bit more, and then talk about Christian media, because a friend of mine says that basically every movie's a sermon.
Yeah, we'll get into that.
And so what are you getting from that sermon? Without further ado, let's play the trailer.
So it turns out the streamers are letting us all down. One has committed itself to destroying Grandma's terms of endearment for her grandbabies. Sorry, Grams, you can't call them cuties anymore. The other has decided that you can't have dragons unless you order them in a brown paper sleeve, so the mailman doesn't have to be wantonly subjected to the TNA of the Seven Kingdoms. You could go to the Christian streaming services where you can put on your ruby slippers and repeat to yourself over and over, but at least it's clean, but at least it's clean. Apparently, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, is also horribly executed. But does it have to be that way? Can a high standard for storytelling exist with a moral backbone and a complete set of clothes for every actor and actress? That is what Loor is about. Quality entertainment for people not interested in seeing strangers naked. Of course, if you are just looking for your fix of and dragons, go to another streaming service, you perv. Be a part of the Loor. Click the link below.
Right on the money.
So that's great. Just calls him out. Go to another place, perv. But what the shame of it is Game of Thrones is a great story arc. That's the shame, the shame of it, right? So it's just too bad. So is that what Loor is trying to do? Is take redemptive story arcs and make movies that are specifically Christian, telling the gospel, or is it just there should be a place to go to get good stories? We
want to control all the art.
Okay.
So I think we talk about Christians in history. Through the Reformation, for example, like you can see a clear difference in the art between Reformational art and Renaissance art.
Yes.
Right? Like the worldview really affected how the art was made. So like Raphael, and like he would paint people with warts and wrinkles on their face, and whereas someone like Michelangelo would make man perfect, and like David had like big hands and all that. Male parts, right? So like it was all about humanism,
right?
And then the Reformational art said, no, man is depraved and wicked and has warts and blemishes on his skin and stuff like that. So you had more realistic sort of. So you see that like your worldview matters in such a way that your art is affected by it. But recently, I mean, like in modern times, Christianity has always been behind the times of the art. We've always been trying to like keep up with everybody else, or at least like Pureflix just released like a Christian version of John Wick, right? Like
what?
which is nuts, and so
you're gonna have to share that with me, because I mean all John Wick does is murder.
I don't even
people,
remember
so
the name, or I would say it, but I don't remember.
Funny.
Right? So
okay.
so like there's always like a Christian version of a movie.
It's like reactionary.
It's reactionary, right?
Yeah.
And so, but Christians are supposed to be on the forefront, and the pagans are supposed to copy what we do.
Right.
Right. They're supposed to imitate us, and so, but we haven't had that. There's a lot of reasons for that. You can go to the Christian music industry, for example, where like country music and Christian music were like one and the same. If you've ever been to Nashville and you go to the Nashville Hall of Fame Museum, you see the hymns. There's hymns, and then they talk about how Christianity and country music were like closely connected. Well, that became a problem when country music started talking about beer and women and all these other things, because the Christians who were listening to country music rejected it, especially in the South where they're pretty prohibitionary anyway, right? So they really rejected it. So what happened was the Christian music industry and the country music industry decided to split, and they created two different genres. And then you had this Christian music genre, and then that moved 30 miles south of Nashville to Franklin, Tennessee. That's where the Christian music capital of the world is, right? And so that's where you get like K-Love, and you get Salem, and you get all these like Christian media industries. And they're specifically controlling and framing what Christian music is, because it can't compete with country music, or it can't compete with these other genres. So Lecrae comes around, Reach Records. It was before that you had like Nota Verbs and Cross Movement and like all these like, old school Christian hip hop, which they were fine with until Lecrae came around and was able to bypass the entire Christian music industry because of the internet and iTunes, right?
Yeah.
And so then you had this huge problem where people are calling into K-Love wanting Lecrae music, and K-Love's like, yeah, but we're praise and worship.
Yeah.
Like, we can't play Lecrae. Like, that's not the sound. That's not the genre we've spent all this money defining. And so then what happened was K-Love started like Air One radio stations, and now you can have Toby Mac and everything on Lecrae and all that stuff on there. And so the result of this was Lecrae saying, look, man, I'm not in the Christian music industry. I'm just a musician. Like, you keep trying to put me in like Air One or like these categories, but why am I not top 40? Like, it doesn't make any sense. And so, I'm not talking about how Lecrae's gone liberal or anything like that. I'm just talking about prior to that. And
why can't we compete in the top 40 space with the pagans?
Right. So then you have the same thing with the Christian film industry. It's like Passion of the Christ came out, $300 million from a $30 million film, and I think this scared Hollywood to such a degree that they realized the only way to beat this is to make it awful for anybody that tries to do this again. Right?
Yeah.
So they punished Mel Gibson. They punished Jim Caviezel. Like, they blacklisted everybody that worked on that movie, because the worst thing they could have happen is have a Christian film of the Passion of the Christ quality premiere on the same weekend as like a Marvel film.
Yeah.
Right.
Like,
you're
that's,
not controlling.
That's bad news.
Yes.
So, God's Not Dead was a few $1 million movie, and it racked in 30 million or more in the box office, and it went crazy. And then so they started Pure Flix, but by then the off-brand Christian movie genre was already defined as this like weird evangelism track movie that people like saw, that sort of stuff. Yeah. And so the only time there, like in the modern times, Passion of the Christ was really the only film that came out that was like, we're just going to go all in. Like, we're just going to, and they got punished for it so bad, nobody else wanted to do anything about it. And so I think that the thing is, what we're trying to do is say, no, we want to be like, what does the HBO of Christian film look like? Like, what does the MTV of Christian media look like? The one that comes in and just breaks all the rules, gives creators freedom to do what they want. Like, what does that look like? And even I still say Christian film as if it's like its own category, but I mean, just in the worldview, like, if you give Christians just complete control and say, make what you want, like, what happens then? I don't think we've seen that.
So do you think like a film series like The Lord of the Rings and would have been like a Christian worldview type of series of movies? Is that what we're talking about? So I'm trying to figure out what's the middle between the evangelistic bubblegum kind of Pure Flix stuff.
Well, I think
like
Lord of the Rings
story
works. Yeah, I think I've always said that Breaking Bad is a great Christian television series because it just shows
the depravity.
Like, what happens when a man becomes in love with his sin to such a degree that he destroys his family. Now, there isn't really redemption in that.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think in some instances that might be okay. So not necessarily, like, if you're doing a political documentary or some sort of documentary, you might not have a redemption at the end of it. Like it might just be a bad story you're telling, and I think that's okay. But I think a Christian would have made it different, so that there was some sort of real justice. There might have been real redemption there somehow, which would have been really great. But I think the way they ended it, in the way that was unlike Dexter, where Dexter, if you've ever seen the TV show Dexter is a serial killer,
right?
And he tried to like redeem himself by killing bad people, and then it became this. So it started out like that, where there was this like moral dilemma, and then the show made him into a hero, and then in the last episode, there's no justice, and he just gets away and becomes a lumberjack.
Right. But that's right. But that's a pretty common story arc, right? Like so, because evil's a thing.
Yes.
Right. Evil is in this world, and because we're made in God's image, we know how just that's wrong.
Right.
Right. And so it's easy to love these revenge films, or Dexter, where Dexter's a serial killer hunting other serial killers. So he's almost hunting down evil and killing it.
Right.
And so it's almost like it's almost redemptive, but it's not what Jesus did. It's not how Jesus killed sin and death.
Right. But the point
Right,
is
yeah.
with Dexter is like he's a bad guy.
Yeah. Yeah.
like vigilante justice
Right.
is bad and
Right.
evil, and he didn't get justice at the end, and it was actually people hated it because
Right.
of that.
And
People hated that he got away with it.
It reminds me of the series Saw, if you've ever heard of that,
Yeah.
the horror series where, and it comes to mind because I just read an article about a new Saw movie that's coming out in late 2021, and how the first 3 films, there's like 8 of them right now, but the first 3 were all about like Dexter, where it was about a serial killer that was taking bad people, alcoholics or rapists or just horrible people, and would basically put them in a room where they have to play a game to survive and to teach them the value of life. And then after 4 through 8 started becoming, now we're just killing people. There's really no redemption. And now the next movie that's coming out called Spiral, which is part of that Saw.
I saw that, man, with Chris Rock.
Yeah, with Chris Rock, right, and Samuel Jackson.
Yeah.
Well, I was reading an article saying that what they're really excited about this new one, a part of the canon, is they're going back to the roots of a moral tale about punishment of those who take life for granted, and they really these directors really missed that. They felt like the last 5 movies were just entertainment and gore and like there's just no moral behind
Senseless.
that.
Yeah,
right. So that's what they're doing with this new one, is they want to go back to bringing this idea of justice to wicked people and show them the value of life. Obviously, no Christian worldview in it, but again, remind me of Dexter and that fascination of justice and what does life really mean.
Right.
So really, it's a counterfeit gospel where you and with Loor want to get creators to, I guess, do maybe some production level just as good, but tell the real story.
Yeah, I don't think we have to fit Christianity into these categories. I've spoken over the past few months. I've spoken to really talented creators, man, all the way up to Emmy-winning creators. I've actually spoken to them, and they're in Hollywood, and they're entrenched in this system that's like, I'm going to be fired if I call someone, my coworker, like gender number 5 instead of gender number 3. They're like, I don't know what to do. What do I do? Right. And like, you talk to people who, I mean, they work for Netflix or they work for Disney or whatever. And they're like, I really want to drive an Uber because I'll be free.
Right.
And it's like, well, God didn't make you to drive an Uber. God made you to be a filmmaker and to be an artist.
Right.
And so there's a moral obligation on Loor's part. It's like, well, how do we create a platform, one, where artists can be paid really well, and not like YouTube or Amazon Prime where it's like pennies per ad, but like actually be paid really well to produce content that is theatrical and at scale. I think it can be done. I think if you look at some of the best films over the past few years, like they're low budget indie films. And then when you start talking about like unions and all this stuff and like how everything's like overpriced because, unions won't let the guy who does the lighting do makeup, even if he's skilled at it, right? If you're in the union, you have to do lighting, right? Like you can't touch a camera. which like in any other job you'd be fired right away.
Yeah.
Like if you were at McDonald's and the manager said, "Hey, I need you to go work the fries, not the cash register," and you go, "I'm sorry, the union rules. Got to only work."
Well, right.
No way.
Right. And we're not like that here. I mean, Jake does all the makok here.
Yeah, right.
I just want to establish that, and he's willing to do whatever it takes.
Hey, man, whatever it takes.
Whatever it takes.
Yeah. So like that, like you have these, I just read an article today that said Netflix paid $450 million for sequel rights to Knives Out.
I saw that. Yeah, I read that today.
$450 million for two films.
For two films. Yeah.
That probably won't get theater distribution.
Yeah.
And like the online streaming uprising that we're seeing now is also creating, I think, a demand for lower cost films.
Yeah,
so this is why Christopher Nolan was really mad when they pulled Tenet from theaters. I think I read that Tenet made $20 million. It was the highest grossing theater movie of 2020 was $20 million.
Yeah, there you go.
And they pulled it and put it on live streaming and he on streaming on demand, and he was like really mad about it because he had equity in the film.
Yeah, and that's why I really appreciate what you're doing, because look at Disney Plus. And I mean that is Disney's bread and butter right now.
Well, they've already said that they're pushing everything to Disney Plus.
Yeah,
they're not even worried.
Right. I mean, and they've kind of saved the Star Wars franchise with Mandalorian with it.
Right. And Warner Brothers just made this deal with Regal Cinemas that said they're going to keep their movies off of streaming for like 45 days.
Yeah.
So it's like, well, that's really strange because I thought they just announced like HBO Max would have all their. But then they've made a deal with like Regal and now, and it's like, okay, but they have a problem. They have all these movies they've made in the back catalog that cost hundreds of millions of dollars. Like we haven't even like Top Gun was supposed to be released last year. We haven't seen Top Gun yet.
Yeah,
that's driving me nuts.
A
Bond,
Quiet Place.
right? Bond. I'm a Bond fanatic.
Yeah.
Even though they've destroyed the franchise.
The question is
with
like,
this
how
last
do you justify a $200 million film on a live streaming platform where the cost of per view would be really pennies per viewer, right? Like how do you justify that? Like it's insane. So there's going to be a demand. Really soon for low budget films that are good, and I've seen them. I can't talk about the content specifically, but we've seen some films and we're like, how much did that cost to make? That's incredible. Like, so it exists and it's possible, but you have to get out of the system to do it. You need to have a camera guy that knows how to adjust the lights on his own, right? Like you need those people that a 3-man team that can make a whole movie. Like you need to figure that out. You're not going to get that in Hollywood. If you like, I was watching the Mighty Ducks TV show with my wife this week, and there was like 7 minutes of credits. It's the same with WandaVision. People are like, why is there 7 minutes of credits at the end of a 22-minute show?
Right.
Like that is completely bloated. And like when we talk about like presuppositionally, we look at scripture and like the laws of economics. Like the goal should be, let's make really cheap films that are as good as possible. And I don't see like Hollywood isn't trying to do that.
Right.
But consistently throughout movie theater history are the low budget Christian movies that bring in the greatest amount of profit. Like even God's Not Dead, $3 million brought in $30 million in the box office. That's incredible.
And it was, you could. I don't want to rip it apart.
I'll rip it apart.
That's his job.
We can rip apart the theology of it and the terrible acting and the fact that David Ayer White's in it and he's in everything.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, I was even going to ask you, like, because I think you'll answer this, is what is the theology behind movies like the quality of the movies like God's Not Dead or Pure Flix? Like, what is the worldview behind making content like that and being satisfied with it? Like, what's the foundation of Christians thinking that way about quality? Or
I think a lot of it is this weird idea that because it's Christian and evangelistic and helps people, it doesn't have to be as good. But I always like to say, well, would you settle for mediocrity in a heart surgeon if he was just doing charity heart surgeries?
Right, you want to go to the guy with a Ferrari,
I know
a house in Malibu.
because I remember I had open heart surgery. I've had 3 of them to fix a birth defect throughout my life. And like the last one I had, he's like, we should go in there and fix like 2 valves instead of 1. And like me and my wife was like, well, is that more risky? Or like, he's like, not if I do it. And I'm like, you're the guy.
Right.
Not that's a Christian.
Right.
But it's like that's the kind of guy. And like, that's the kind of people I want making Christian movies. That's going to say, look, we're not going to make trash. We're not going to make garbage. And the way to do that is just really just to create the platform where people could just make what they want and not have to go into those sort of weird Christian boundaries and stuff. And like, I mean, the rules for PureFlix films, if you were to try to submit a film to PureFlix, they would red ink your entire script with concerns that are really like nobody really has.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But they think they do, and they've created an audience that expects those things, which is weird. Because if you think about it, the way the Christian film industry was built, it was built on we're not going to be in the theater long. Like we're not going to have 16-week runs in the movie theater. We're probably only going to be there 2 or 3 weeks. Yep. So majority of our money has to come from DVD sales. Well, where are people buying Christian DVDs at? Well, it's Lifeway, right? Family Christian Bookstore, those sort of things.
Which are gone now.
Well, who shops at Lifeway and Family Christian Bookstores? It's 35-year-old soccer moms,
Hockey's too brutal.
Yeah, I'm just talking about the Mighty Ducks. So.
Yeah.
But yeah, those are the people that's their main market, and so PureFlix will tell you, well, that's that. We this needs to appeal to women. Their content person is a woman. And a mom, and so but it's weird though, because if you go into like Lifeway, every book that they sell at Lifeway is not for every single person in your family. Right? There's marriage books.
Yeah,
there's single teenager books.
Mm-hmm.
There's books for women. There's books for men.
Well, study Bibles for women only. Study Bibles for men only.
Right. That's a completely different conversation.
Right.
But the point is that like when K-Love says safe for the whole family, the implication there is that there's one genre, and that's Christian films, and whether it's a Christian horror film or a Christian action film, it has to be safe for the whole family. But that's not what happens in the real world. Like, you would take your teenage sons to a Marvel movie that you wouldn't take your 2 or 3-year-old to,
right,
or something like that most of the time, right? So like there are movies for different people in different age groups, and then so Christian media hasn't really figured that out yet, and so that opens up a completely different thing where somebody can come to you and say, hey, I want to make a movie for like 20-year-old single guys. Like Christian film would never buy that, because they would go, yeah, but why are the women going to buy the tickets? The other thing too is that you have this issue where we were actually talking to a guy, and he makes Christian films and distributes them, and we were telling him about Loor, and he goes, yeah, but like when you say like films for adults, how are you going to get the pastor to tell the church to see it? And I was like, the pastor it's streaming. People watch Game of Thrones in the privacy of their own home, whether the pastor approves of it or not, and that's porn. Like, we don't have to get pastoral approval. Right. And the only reason the Christian film industry has survived is because they get that pastoral approval, and then the pastor goes and buys an entire movie theater for a night or a weekend, right? And then they give out free tickets.
Oh, okay.
Right? But it doesn't matter what the quality of the movie is. It's
right.
They use the evangelism aspect as a way to really push.
Or to justify it. I mean, when I was a missional team leader with Campus Crusade, that would be one of the outreaches that we would do.
Right.
We were going to show God's not dead. We're going to invite people. We're going to have pizzas. And we can feel good about that, right? We did what we were supposed to do. And I had 400 people there, and that's a win. And I can tell my donors
but it
who are
wasn't
paying
based
my
on, like, the
paycheck
quality
that I
of,
shared the gospel.
Yeah, it's not based on the quality of the movie.
No.
Right? Like,
no.
if that didn't happen and God's Not Dead had to compete just, dollar for dollar with like a regular movie, they would lose every single time.
No, absolutely. And I think like some of those evangelistic movies are in a whole separate category from like every Friday is pizza movie night here.
Right.
And it is a struggle with a 12-year-old and a 13-year-old. My 20-year-old's out now, but it's a struggle to find something to watch that, your advertisements, no naked people, no cursing, right? Like even a decent story arc, it doesn't have to be redemptive. It doesn't have to be the gospel. It's just got to be entertaining.
Right.
And so, but that's a chore because half of what's on Disney Plus is garbage. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's right.
And that's just the Marvel stuff. So, no, sorry.
Depending on
I'm just waiting for
yeah.
that was a pause for all the comments we're going to get about me badmouthing Marvel. So it's just garbage. So what you're talking about is having a streaming channel with actually entertaining content that I can watch with my 13-year-old and not have to really worry about it.
Right. Yeah. Well. Yeah. Yes. And then stuff you can send your 13-year-old to bed and watch with your wife.
Okay, so explain that to me. So on your website, there's kind of two things you can do. One, you can be an investor, and then one, you can be a content creator.
Yeah.
So if I was a content creator, what elements are you looking for, or what are my parameters?
So right now, the only thing we're doing is when we're interviewing people, so it's not open to like anybody that just wants to like throw something up like YouTube, right?
I'm pretty good. I'm pretty
so
good with an iPhone, man. I submitted myself.
There is some.
I make cowboy movies.
Yeah, there is some sort of curating.
That's right.
Yeah. Right. But ultimately, when we talk about like the kinds of films you can make, a 13-year-old might not be interested in a political documentary.
Okay.
Right, like, but you and your wife, or like a true crime documentary, or something along like that's something like you
or
and your
a
wife,
drama.
Yeah, or even like a drama, or certain like there's certain things that the parents watch together that might not be sinful,
right?
That your kid just doesn't care about.
Right.
They might watch it.
Fair enough.
It's okay for them, but they just might not like
Or me, unless it's an action movie.
Yeah.
Well, there's some things that you might like to watch that your wife doesn't like to watch,
right.
And that's okay too.
Right.
Right, like so there is like a variety in terms, and Hollywood's figured this out,
right? No, it's true,
right? True. Like, but we haven't within the Christian film industry. We mainly, we call it Christian film, but then we say, well, it's evangelistic, so it's for the pagans. Well, if it's for the pagans, then why isn't it better?
Yeah,
right. So it's just this weird sort of thing it's just strange. It's just such a strange industry. I can't wait to end it.
That's right.
Yeah. So you're trying to capitalize really on all the Christian eyeballs that are settling for Disney Plus and settling for, or for me, right? I got the Amazon Prime, the Disney Plus, maybe Netflix, and there's like 20% of each that I can watch. Where you would like to say, you could spend 100% of your time here because all those genres are there. And they're just maybe not sinful to watch. Right. So like Game of Thrones without the porn, which is really not even needed,
right,
would be something that would be
for
on
sure. Yeah,
Loor.
like I know like Amazon's doing like a Lord of the Rings TV show, and
right.
they in their casting requirements said that they have to be comfortable with nudity. Why?
Yeah.
It's Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, wow. Right.
Like, why? It's Lord of the Rings. And so they actually got a lot of flack for that because there are people that are passionate about brands.
Yes.
That don't want, like, they might be social justice themselves, or they might adhere to critical race theory themselves, but they don't want it, like, in their stories. It annoys them. There's only a very small, minute, angry Twitter mob that really demands that of these organizations. And so when you're told as a director, well, you can't make that film because of this or that, or you have to recast this character because that character can't be a black character because it's sort of a subservient character to a white character, like all these weird, like this weird stuff that's going to, like, it's good for us because it's going to destroy art.
Yeah,
like
I think you're right.
Like art cannot survive.
I think that's God's grace in some of this. They're like they're destroying themselves.
Right. That's with every like pagan civilization.
Right.
They just ultimately wind up destroying themselves, and the Christians rise from the ashes.
Right.
So that's why we're building Loor now, to prepare the platform that once it does destroy itself, or even to chip some holes in the wall, and just get it ready to crumble, But I honestly believe if Christian artists could create content on a fair plane, and be given the money and the freedom that's given to, or that was given to secular film studios, I think Christians will just knock it out of the park every time.
Yeah,
because we have better stories.
Well, as a guy that pays attention to media, why is adding nudity so important to some of these stories or these series?
I don't.
Because it doesn't seem to really add anything. Does it draw that many more eyeballs to it?
I mean, I don't think so. What was I?
What's their? I guess.
Yeah.
Their
So
mindset?
I was watching something about they. What was it? It was. I can't remember, but it was something that started out, and it was the last Blockbuster documentary. Which, by the way, is really ironic because it's on Netflix, which was really cool.
That's
It
funny.
was just there's something really cool about that, but from a Dominion standpoint. So
Yes.
It's about the last Blockbuster, and they were talking about how all these rental places started popping up, and they had these the seedy little back room with the beads,
Yeah.
and you go in there, it's
Yeah.
there's a porn collection or whatever. right?
Pre-Christian, I was that guy,
Yeah.
right? Who's in there?
Yeah, and the owner of Blockbuster, the guy that started the first Blockbuster, said, "No, let's just make it a family store."
Yeah.
And that one thing is what really blew it up. So there might be this idea. I think there might be this idea that that showing nudity increases sales. But I think when you compare that to Disney films, I think Disney films, Disney's the biggest industry in the film industry in the world, and it's not because of nudity.
That's right. Yeah.
Right? So I think time after time we see companies that value the family actually make more money.
Right? No, it's true.
That's ironic.
Like every
True.
time. So, but also it's. I think it's also too because Hollywood is filled with perverts.
Yeah.
you know, there was
Yeah.
what was this? There's this documentary series about. I think it was Project Greenlight, or maybe it was the one they did with Shane Dawson or whatever. And there was this scene. There was a nude scene in the film, and the producer they wanted to keep it a closed room when they filmed this thing. It wasn't in a documentary, but they were talking about how today's the day we filmed the nude scene, whatever. And then you had the executive producer who's never on set,
Yeah.
and these other people just show up and they're like, we need a monitor. Why do you need a monitor on this day for this scene? That doesn't make any sense. It's because they're perms.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, Weinstein wasn't a
Right.
single thing. That's throughout the entire industry. What's the HBO show now that Allen versus Farrow about
Yeah.
Woody Allen and his just straight, just perverted,
Yeah.
just everything.
Well, there's a YouTube documentary out there from a stuntman that talks about the industry and how there's a lot of perversion and satanic rituals.
yeah, I
that
saw
go on.
that film. I
And
remember.
so it's not a byproduct of marketing. It's a byproduct of just the people that are involved are just perverts.
Right.
Okay.
Because marketing wins every time.
Right.
There's a reason McDonald's makes so much money. It's because of Happy Meals.
Right.
right?
Right.
Like Happy
Right.
Meals and play places, and
Yeah.
Chick-fil-A has the dresses of cow nights for families and stuff like that. All that
Yep.
all that stuff
That's
is
right.
really
Right.
important. Disney
Right.
has theme parks that's family friendly theme parks, and they make tons of money. You can't make an argument that family films don't make money. It's impossible. Or
Right.
family anything.
Right. So how long have you been doing Loor?
So we started mainly the end of last year, 2020, around that time, and have really just been going full scale at this point. So we have 5 people on our team. We have a CEO, a CTO, COO, and we have I don't know. You probably know Jason Farley. No. Oh, he did was it I'm not an NSA student. A disparata. I don't know.
Oh, Disputatio.
Disputatio.
That thing.
Or a
on
dispy.
on poetry and stuff at NSA just a few weeks
yeah.
ago. He's on our founding team,
Okay.
and he's also a screenwriter and stuff like that. So we have like all these different like just things going full scale, and then the website is being designed, content is being made actively right now.
Okay.
We already have some of the first films and stuff that we're going to launch with ready to go. It's just really a matter of just time before we launch. We don't have a set date yet, but
Okay.
It's all about you don't have to be the first to an industry, but you do have to be better.
Right.
And so just figuring out like how do we take our time and not feel rushed or anything like that, and just really focus on putting out a good product like Apple, right? Like Apple wasn't the first smartphone,
Right.
but they were like
The best.
Yeah, right. And they weren't the first, MP3 player, but the iPod was the best, right? So just trying to figure out, take that time, it's always that balance of like your investor money going down and like your quality of product. But it's going really well. We got an amazing designer that's designing the website. The website looks and feels like something different,
Yeah.
which is really neat. Like everything about our branding and stuff that we're doing, like it's really like when you see it, like you're like, oh, this is something for men.
Yeah.
This doesn't seem like, my wife is just making me take the kids to a Christian movie. Like seems like a platform men can enjoy.
Right.
If you think about it, like men are the ones that make all the entertainment decisions.
Yeah.
Like they're the ones that buys the TV. They're the ones that decide whether they, subscribe to Netflix or have cable or whatever. It's usually men that make that decision for the entertainment in the home. So
Wow.
it's
in
weird.
2021, you're going to make that statement?
Yeah, I'll say it. Wow. I'll say it.
Wow.
So
How patriarchal of you.
yeah, actual gender categories that matter, right?
So what are your needs? So I was on there. I agree. I think your website's really slick and really good.
Mm-hmm.
So are your needs more, you're probably going to say both, but is your needs more in content creators or in investors? And then the second question would be, have you thought about opening up investing to a smaller scale? Because right now it looks like investors are in at either
50,000
50 or above,
accredited,
right? Yeah.
So there has been a lot of discussion about that. Eventually, we would probably do the crowdsource funding. I know, like the Reg F is what it's called, or Reg C. I don't know what the government is weird, but they just increased the limits. The SEC just increased the limits to $5 million, and the problem is that requires a lot of work to when you deal with like thousands of investors.
Yeah.
That's a lot more work of like just sort of like from a customer service standpoint, it's way easier to go up to a guy that'll write you a check for $100,000, and then he just goes away for several months and just waits patiently.
He's looking for his valuation to go up. Right?
Yeah, and so crowdfunding is good once you already have something established that people know and like they're already behind you and supportive of you, and which we already have like a really great base of people that are just excited and are on board and like they're ready to give money, but we'd rather that money that they want to give to us actually go to the creators once the site launches.
Right. Okay.
Because that just makes more sense in terms of what we're doing is like, why don't we figure out, how to get that money into the creators' hands and not to us and like let us just build the technology on the back end.
Right, because once you have the content, then you'll get the subscribers.
Right. Yeah, it's a content game. The whole thing's a content game.
Yeah.
So, what does Jason says? He says it's a story war.
Story war.
Yeah,
Right.
we're in a story war, right? Like whether it's with other Christian companies or with the pagan Hollywood, like the best story, may the best story win. Like that's what's going to happen. And so, and like either way, like competition isn't a problem even within the Christian community because competition drives prices down. I think a lot of people go, oh, there's competition, whether it's VidAngel or PureFlix, or which by the way is owned by Sony. which is not a Christian company.
Wow.
So all your money to PureFlix is really going, they go, wow, Christian films are so profitable. Let's make more Christian films and use those profits to fund our loss leaders,
Right.
which are the LGBT films that nobody watches, right?
Right.
So that's what they do.
It's like when Budweiser buys your favorite microbrewery.
Yeah, that's exactly
You're
right.
like, no.
You're like, now I have to
No.
support Budweiser. Right. That's exactly right. That's
Yeah.
exactly the same. That's the same thing that, So I don't think I'm not afraid of competition. Like the more competition that's out there, the better it is for the consumer. And we're talking about, what does a consumer want? Like they want good Christian stories. So
Right.
that's great.
Yeah. So will you guys ever? Would you ever go public? Because that's the ultimate crowdsourcing,
That's been
right?
a question. Like that's been a question we've been asked like a lot. Like,
Yeah.
would you go public? Because when you go public, you lose the
Right.
Christian foundation, right?
Right. A lot of handles on you.
My answer to that is I would go public if, or I would sell the company if I could build 10 of them of what I just built to take it down.
Right.
Like if they want like the scraps that I made and I can build 10 more amazing things, then maybe. But
Okay.
I don't think that's like really in the picture. That'd be awesome just to even have that conversation realistically. Like, let's get to that point where we can actually have that conversation.
Right.
But it would be over. I think there's ways to do it though, because I think you can go public with a company if your company is so ingrained with a certain brand and stuff that the customers can't endorse your company without. So I like to give an example. I don't think they have gone public. I don't think so. But Chick-fil-A cannot be open on Sunday.
Right.
Like it's so ingrained in the company
Yes.
culture, like customers would lose their minds. Like whether or not Chick-fil-A is still technically considered even a Christian company anymore, you can debate that. But like they cannot open on Sunday.
That's their reputation.
So even if they went public, the stock market would revolt on them opening on Sunday. So it just depends on how you build your company culture and your brand.
Right.
And the loyalty of your customers in such a way that you could go public and there would be nothing with the stockholders would revolt against you for, that'd be tough. But especially when you start talking about trans and movies and diversity quotas and stuff, I don't know if the stock market is really in favor of that stuff as much as being closed on Sundays.
Yeah. Do you have anything, Z?
This is really good.
One other question. So this sounds very two kingdom. How is this more of a dominion theology? What you're doing?
There you go.
Well, the dominion theology is that we want to. There's a giant, which is Hollywood, and we want to take a stupid little rock and throw it at its head, and so it's complete. Like the idea is that if you create technology or art in such a way that's great and wonderful that the pagans will have to imitate what you've done, right? So the dominion here is we decentralize filmmaking. We make it available to anyone, not just those with the suits, that sit, in Burbank or wherever, right?
Right.
And then we make it available to anyone, and we get rid of the gatekeepers, and then we sort of create a printing press for films. Like that's where the dominion theology is.
So they would follow you.
They'd have to.
because that's where the money is.
Yeah, they would have to.
They'd have to copy
or,
you.
or they go, wow, that's that film is really popular. Let's make our own kind of film that imitates it. But what they'd really be copying is a Christian worldview that's part of it. So I think it is possible for pagans. That's just that's good. Like one of the things that God gave us is like capitalism as a means to get rid of evil. Like we forget about that because we like our society thinks capitalism is evil, and for the most part, the crony capitalism that runs the country is evil. But like pure capitalism actually is a preventative measure to stop wickedness.
Ooh, unpack that a little bit.
Okay, for example. I had a really good example before, but I forgot it. I'm trying to think. Let's say your company starts embracing LGBT. There's a company you watch, and they start really going in on LGBT stuff. Well, the result of the individuals we can just say, well, yeah, we're just not going to support that company anymore, right? Like, so there's a way within capitalism to punish those that do evil. And then, you know, there's a lot of examples. But when you have like a crony capitalist system where, like Hollywood, for example, where it's essentially, you know, just a bunch of people making decisions, even among separate companies, they're working together. Like, it's a lot harder to do that. But if you have a true free market, you can just go, yeah, you know, Loor makes stuff as good as Netflix. Why am I paying for Netflix? Right. And then Netflix goes, well, I guess if we want to get those Loor customers, we have to make Loor content that appeals to the Loor customers. And so now you have the pagans that are actually making decent family-friendly content with a, you know, Christian worldview, or even hiring Loor artists to go and make stuff for Netflix with the same freedoms because they just want the money. Right. So like that's sort of like
you would see that as a win.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Because now we're dumping Christian worldview into Netflix.
Yeah. If Hollywood were to realize that they have to change the way they make movies to make money and to make a profit because Loor is so dominated in the industry, that's a huge win.
Where's Kevin Sorbo going to find the time to do all those movies?
There's only one actor, right? Yeah, you know, that's
and then that blonde guy, what's his name? It's like
David Ayer White.
Yeah, him and Kevin Sorbo.
You know, it's a family studio, right? Like it's a family studio, so they just, you know, they make their own scripts in house, and they you know, David Ayer White's, you know, in both of them, in every movie he's a lead,
So basically, Dominion looks like taking and then free market looks like taking leadership over what is considered good.
Yeah,
movie
every
making.
fast food restaurant now has a fried chicken sandwich.
Right.
Or like a southern fried chicken sandwich. Like McDonald's is still trying to get something that's close. I don't have the guts to even try a McDonald's southern chicken sandwich.
And my son loves it.
Have you tried it?
My son loves it.
Yeah? Okay.
Yeah, my 13-year-old, he can't get enough chicken sandwiches at McDonald's.
Right. So I mean, like, there's always this, like, there's a battle even between the fast food companies to imitate Chick-fil-A.
Right.
You know, like that's a sort of thing. Like why doesn't that work in other industries? Of course it works in other industries.
Right.
So you just have to really be, you know, creator focused, I think, is probably the main thing. Like YouTube is not creator focused anymore. It used to be.
Right.
Like YouTube used to, like, it was just always like it was all about the content creator. It didn't matter like how big you were or how small you were. And now it's become this like corporate monstrosity that the creators that make a living on YouTube hate it. Like they hate it. Like I think they just announced the other day that they're getting rid of like the amount of dislikes that are viewable on a video, so it'll just be like the amount of likes, but like you'll never see the dislikes because they said they were worried about creators' well-beings when they got like a lot of dislikes.
Well, weren't they doing that with Biden's inaugurational speech?
Well, see, that's what it really is.
Oh, that's the
because they also say they're worried. Well, on one hand, we're worried about creators' well-beings, but on the other hand, the creator can still see the amount of dislikes in the back end of their account. Well, it's like, you're not hiding it.
Yeah, in the end, you're not.
It's not for the creator then. And so
not.
they actually got like really trashed on Twitter for that, and not like even like, you know, complete pagans are like, do you not care about like creators? Like, it's okay for creators to like have a video that people hate.
Right. Well, yeah, big tech is becoming very transparent.
Yeah, but really, like you said, it's really just because every Biden video on YouTube gets more dislikes and likes. Right?
It's insane.
So they now they want to hide that. So it's just propaganda piece. And so, I mean, like, you know, YouTube. I mean, I remember like when YouTube first started, there were like atheist and Christian debates on the front page of the website. Like, and then you could make a video and you could reply instead of like actual comment. You could actually make a video reply, and like that would signal the creator, and then the creator would respond to you. Like, it was amazing. And then like the bigger it got, bought by Google, it's just become this sort of like liberal means of like propaganda, and they're only focused on, you know, mainstream media, you know, using their platform and major artists and stuff like that. So they've really abandon the creator. But I think like what made them popular and successful was that they were creator focused.
Yeah, and connected to Jason's question that he asked you about, like, you have like dominion theology, but then you have the common two kingdom idea of separating sacred, secular. This kind of connects, but it sounds like obviously how you're building it and your economics is obviously coming from the law of God. That's your foundation of how you look at the world and how you want to take dominion. And hopefully this relates, but what popped in my mind when Jason asked that question was today, actually, the Gospel Coalition came out with an article critiquing theonomy for the 100th time. But my point being is, you have 9 Marks doing this, you have
it's
Gospel
weird
Coalition.
because like theonomists are nobodies, right?
Well,
like,
yeah, well, that's my whole point.
Nobody cares about theonomy. It's just a tiny little sect, but yet the Gospel Coalition has to respond to it.
Exactly. So that was going to be my point. What you just said is like, why is that like still coming up, and this can even tie into how you live your life according to the law of God and how Christians can. Why is it still a threat? And this is how it relates to Christian media and dominion theology.
It's a threat to the Gospel Coalition for a host of
reasons.
True. Yeah. But I think specifically because they do have a two kingdom approach. And they don't have solutions. They're all like, police brutality is evil and wicked and bad on one hand.
Yeah.
And then they're like, well, the solution is
that
like...
depends.
Right. Sorry. The solution is...
As an ex-cop, brutality depends. No,
right. The solution is reparations.
Yeah.
Well, that's not reparations. The solution is maybe more localized, less militarized police departments who enforce the law, locally, So I don't know
we
where
should
you stand on this.
We should have another conversation.
This is a whole other conversation.
That would be great.
I opened up something completely
that would be a great conversation. Go ahead.
Yeah.
I'm in no rush.
As a former SWAT sniper.
Yeah,
that would be a great conversation.
I'd love to have it with you. It'd be fun. But I think they say, well, the solution is liberalism, right? The solution to all these problems is liberalism. And we're saying, at Loor, we're like, no, the solution to terrible Hollywood movies is Christianity. Like it's the worldview, it's the law of God. It's not Marxism or communism. Like that's not going to fix your problem. You're not going to see the Gospel Coalition come up with a basis for good Christian art because they would have to go to like Exodus 35.
Yeah, right.
Like you'd have to go to the construction of the temple and say, oh look, well, like what do you see in Exodus 35? Well, you have artists who are skilled and good at what they do, and yet God gives them freedom to do what they want within the confines of his requirements, right? So Schaefer talks about that a lot.
Yeah,
right?
ironically, right?
Like the guy, the guy that puts the jewels on the wall wasn't given specific designs. He could use his creative freedom to do that, right? So God allows that. Yeah. That's a whole nother subject, but you're not going to see that level of in-depth general equity from a two kingdom guy in the Old Testament, and so it just applies to art or law or whatever. And also they're communist Marxists too, so that's just going to affect.
There's that.
Well, I'm glad we brought that up because I think that gives a good clarity to how we approach media from a Christian worldview. There's no such thing as neutrality, and yet that you don't see answers coming from Gospel Coalition or other things.
Well, I think it's because they don't want to tell you their answer.
Yeah, well,
that we're on their side.
Yeah. Right. That might reveal that they're not as closely evangelical as they want to pretend to be, but I think that I think like any sort of failed system, it's a failed system when they don't want to engage people about it. So when like they're blocking people on Facebook, when they're blocking people on Twitter, when they refuse to have like, hey, let's have a moderated debate and really hash this out, or let's just come on each other's podcasts and talk this out and like hash this out. Yeah. What's the I think like it happened like one time on Cross Politic with Jonathan.
Yes.
Lehman. Jonathan Lehman.
Yeah, that was a great
That'll
discussion.
never happen ever again.
No.
Right. So like that, but that's how the losing side. The losing
Right.
side is the one that will not allow that other conversation to take place. It's always that.
And it's a threat because they keep bringing it up.
Yeah.
If you, like you mentioned, if they're mocking and saying it's just a small little group, Bonson, Rushdoony, but yet they keep bringing it up.
But this works in anything, right?
Like
I could go to like Planned Parenthood. Hey, let's just debate abortion. You want to? No, we're not going to talk with you guys. You guys are. We actually I tried that. We actually were very close to when I was working for Apologia of getting one of the top abortion doctors in the world who wrote a book on like, why the Bible supports abortion. It's a mess. Never. It's just a mess. But he was going to debate us until he Googled us. And it was like, yeah, not going to happen, right?
Whoa.
You know, so like there's always these like these academic oppositions, and they say, well, we're right, so we don't engage anybody. But the true side is always the one that says, well, let's just have the conversation. Let's get it out there to the public. And like, we don't need to suppress dislikes on YouTube.
Exactly.
Right? Like, we don't have to suppress people on YouTube and Facebook, you know. So that's just consistent. And so, the Gospel Coalition, this is a whole different show, the Gospel Coalition.
That's right. But it definitely ties into, again, how you're going to view art and how you're going to take dominion and bring, quality and make much of Christ in how you
just
how you
freedom.
Yeah,
just freedom within the laws of God, like, right?
Yeah.
So we say, you know, like one of our things we tell artists is like, look, we just want you to love God and make what you want. We were talking to one guy, and he was telling us, he's like, well, you know, what do you want to pitch? Do you want, like, what do you want? And I was like, no, we already seen your work. Like, you can just make whatever you want. Like, and he was just blown away. Like, that's not the industry he works in. The industry he works with has like 30 bosses above him. Right. And every decision is made like over the period of months. Right. And we're just like, no, just make whatever you want. And he's just like, I'm like, you're a Christian. You're not going to put nudity in it. So I don't care. I don't need to see, like, I already know you're talented. Right. Like, like what else do I need to know? Like, either you're going to make something that people like, or you're going to make something people don't like. You know.
So how do you? So coming into this space, how do you make sure you're anti-fragile, where you can't get canceled? You know what I mean?
Yeah, no,
like Parler.
That is more of a question for our CTO.
Okay.
Who's our technology officer?
Okay.
That is, of course, a question and a fear that we all have. I think, like every sort of. But the great thing is. The internet was created to be decentralized, and it still exists in that function. It's a lot harder, but it still exists. It might take more money, but it still exists. So I think the problem is that once the technology is like when you see like a civilization rise up, and there's all these like Christian innovations, and then the civilization collapses. The technology never disappears. Like, it's very rare. I mean, you could probably make an argument that pre-flood technology disappeared, right? Because they find like weird Egyptian batteries, or something like that, and you're like, oh, I wonder what could they? That's a whole different conversation.
Jason's like, I gotta go.
I didn't even know the Egyptians had batteries.
Yeah, like Google it. Like, there's like they found these like weird, like they conduct electricity.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so like the pre-flood technology disappeared, but post-flood, and I always point to the Tower of Babel. When you go to the Tower of Babel. You see this, God says, for them all things are possible. And then he says, so I have to split up their languages. Right. And then you see Jesus, like throughout the Gospels, he's saying, with God, anything is possible. With God, anything. That's the reverse of what God said at Babel, right? And then you get to Pentecost, and then the languages come back, right? And then ever since then, communication technology has just always just prospered ever since then, right? So, it wasn't like paper wasn't even invented until like 100 years after Christ, right? 100 AD, right? So like paper, and then printing press, and then even Morse code, which is really essentially the foundation of digital technology right now. It's just ones and zeros, right? So it's Morse code. So like Samuel Morse's story is incredible. Like I don't know if you've talked about him, but he's solid Christian guy. He was a painter and an artist, and he went to go on a business trip, and his wife died, and he got the letter, and the letter said, don't bother coming back. She'll already be buried in the ground by the time you get this letter. And so he was just like concerned with like this, like, why is communication so slow? Right? It's only the speed of a horse. Like, that's how fast communication was, is the speed of a horse. And Gary North talks about like the day before the telegraph was invented, and then the day after, the difference in the speed of communication was the speed of light. Like, and there's never been a significant technological advancement of that leap in like one night, like 24 hours. It's like just Right? And the first words he wrote on the Morse code was, "What hath God wrought? What blessings has God brought to our nation?" And that's like still in the Supreme Court building today. You can see it, right? So all these communication, like printing press, obviously Christian worldview, telegraph, all these things. Even like I think they hired some like unbelievers to make the first like transcontinental telegraph line, right? So the first transcontinental line they made just completely just didn't work. And so they hired like this Christian guy. And the Christian guy comes, and then like they had devotion, like so they had the two boats, and then they did a devotion, and then like each boat went like from the middle of the, whatever, and then like the very first telegraph from like the Queen to the President was like, "May God keep this technology neutral for the spreading of his peace throughout the earth." Like that's like the first transcontinental telegraph message. It's just insane. It's incredible. And so I actually think Christians have a supernatural advantage, and that God will bless Christians' ability to further decentralize communication and make it widely available. But it's throughout history, it seems to be that only Christians have unlocked that ability. And I think there might be something post-millennial about that, where God wants those achievements specifically for Christians.
Right.
So
wow,
for His name. So
you just blew my mind.
Yeah,
you just blew my mind.
Well, I think the Tower of Babel like makes that clear. I think with God all things are possible. Right. Right. And then Tower of Babel, like that, the entire curse is completely reversed at that point. So there is. I mean, it's a theory. It's not like something I would like make a theological exposition on, but I think there is something to it. I don't disagree with what you're saying, and I think I would also agree that it may be a little harder, but you're right. The protocols are decentralized. Right. It just takes a little bit more effort. Yeah, it's hard. But, Christians do hard things. Right? That's all we do. Yeah. Right. That's all we do. It's like Chilton says at the end of Paradise Restored, get to work. Yeah, get to work. Right. That's right. That's how he ends it. Get to work. Yeah. Love it. So how can people support you as we wrap this up? Like, how can people support you, support Loor? So accredited investors are our main thing right now. And then if you want to just stream and get news and updates and sign up once Loor launches, you can go to loor.tv, Loor.tv, and then you can sign up as an investor, a streamer, or a content creator if you have content, whether you've already made it and it's just like sitting on Amazon Prime making making a nickel for every 1,000 views, or whatever. Or if you want to make content and you've made it in the past and have something to show, you can go there and fill out the application, and we'll get back with you. So awesome. Love it. Well, thank you so much for joining us and talking about this. I think this is such a important topic that Christians definitely need to have a basis for, and I think you hit a lot of good points. So thank you. Thank you for having me. Yeah. All right. Hey, that's it for another week. World Views at War. Thank you for watching and listening. Remember to like us on your podcast feed service, wherever you get your
Spotify,
podcasts.
iTunes, whatever. Yeah.
Like us and share us on YouTube. All right. Thanks, Marcus. All right.